or metastatic ovarian cancer that moved to other organs within the last 10 years, don't wait. Call right now.
In Memphis, Tennessee, day 3 of Billy Ray Turner's murder trial. Turner accused of killing former NBA star Lorenzen Wright, but prosecutors say he had help from Lorenzen's ex-wife and her cousin, who is the state's star witness.
What did you say to her when this subject matter came up?
It's not the business you want to be in.
In Chicago, Illinois, actor Jussie Smollett set free by the appellate court while he appeals his conviction. And his lawyers are convinced they will win.
In this country, you cannot punish a person twice. And while everyone was focused on the sensationalism surrounding this case, people were not focused on the constitutionality of the prosecution. And we've been trying to tell everyone that. It is unconstitutional to charge someone twice.
On the docket tonight in Chula Vista, California, mother of 3, Maya Miliete, has been missing for more than a year. She has never been found, but investigators say her husband, Larry, had a spell cast on Maya and has been charged with her murder.
As December of 2020 came, those messages to spellcasters were a lot more threatening. He was asking for May to become incapacitated, for May to be in an accident, to have broken bones so that she could stay at home, thus displaying his homicidal ideations to harm May.
Plus, the NYPD sends out a wanted poster for a woman wanted for being involved in prostitution and theft. But they put the wrong person on the poster, and now that Instagram influencer is suing the NYPD for $30 million. Tonight's 13th juror question: how much do you think the case is worth? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And in a lot of the cases that we cover and trials, very recently, as a matter of fact, we've heard a lot about one of our amendments, number 5, the 5th Amendment. And when I say the 5th, I know what you think of. No, not Jack Daniels. No, what you think of is the right to remain silent, right? We all say, yeah, he took the 5th, she took the 5th, he's not going to talk. Take the 5th, they arrest you, take the 5th, don't say. Absolutely, that is part of the 5th Amendment. But there's another part to the 5th Amendment. Let me read it to you. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of limb or life or limb. What's that all about? That's about double jeopardy. It means our forefathers were smart enough to put it in our Constitution that you don't get punished more than once for the same crime. Seems fair. Seems right. It's in our Constitution. This is big. This is huge, okay? We don't try people in this country twice for the same crime. Now, let's talk about Jussie Smollett. You saw him right here on the show last night, live, being released from the Cook County Jail. He's got an appeal pending. And we got a real sneak peek at what the main argument is going to be, and perhaps the strongest argument from his defense team. And it all has to do with that 5th Amendment. No, not the right to remain silent, but the right to be tried only once for a crime. This case has a bizarre, an extremely bizarre, and it played out publicly, procedural history. And I'll tell you what, last night his attorneys spoke afterwards, and we listened to them. And they said a couple of things. One, they were claiming Jussie Smollett's innocence in the case. I'm like, okay, I'll take that with a grain of salt. You got to say that. You're his attorneys. But then they issued a challenge. And I found this really the most fascinating part of what they were saying last night. It was like directed at kind of like people like me, although we didn't cover the trial when it happened. Because they didn't let cameras in, and we were in the midst of other big cases here on Court TV. But he really was sending it to everyone who had covered this trial and this case from the beginning, the media, saying, you guys missed the boat on what the real problem is in this case. It's that he was punished once already for this conduct, for what he did. And then there was a second prosecution. Like I just read to you in the Constitution. We're not supposed to do that in this country. So this is a real issue. And you could see it in his eyes as he spoke, his attorney. There was a passion. And you know, sometimes defense attorneys, we're going to have some on tonight, you know, sometimes they can put on a little bit of a show, right? This wasn't a show. This was real when he was talking about this particular issue. Take a listen.
Let me make something clear. There is no room for politics in our court system, and our appellate courts in this great state do not play politics. Let me make something clear. When this case was initially re-indicted, when this case was prosecuted, when this case was sentenced, at each of those steps, I wondered to myself whether Chicago has seceded from the Union. Because in this country, you cannot punish a person twice. And while everyone was focused on the sensationalism surrounding this case, people were not focused on the constitutionality of the prosecution. And we've been trying to tell everyone that. It is unconstitutional to charge someone twice. Mr. Smollett paid a $10,000 fine. Let me repeat it again, because our appellate courts are listening. Paid a $10,000 fine and did community service. Now, there's no time machine to go back in time to undo those things. His $10,000 fine hasn't even been returned to him, right? And then you re-indict the case and you give him 30 months probation for a Class 4 felony with a man with no criminal record, felony record. 30 months probation, you give him 150 days in jail. You give him what else? You make him do restitution of $120,000, and then you give him the maximum fines. You know, and there's something wrong with that.
Apparently, any citizen in Chicago, if they want to, if they don't like the decision that this duly elected official makes, can saunter into the courtroom and ask for a special prosecutor. I hope every citizen of Chicago realizes how important this case is, because this could be you. You may think, oh, that's ridiculous, I would never do these things that he's accused of. But you can definitely be charged for something you didn't do. You should never, ever be charged again for something that you had already been prosecuted for. It's important. Do not minimize it. It's not a joke.
I hope the media would actually, instead of leaving here today and reporting about how he walked out and what, report on the constitutionality. Should the press, the #1 defenders of the Constitution, the fourth arm of government, should you be standing by reporting on how, oh, I think this is crazy, Jussie did this, maybe he did this, as opposed to standing there and asking yourselves in your newsroom, is this right? Could this happen to any one of us? Could someone come by and say, hey, listen, guys, I grew up in Nigeria under military rule. It's dangerous. We're playing with fire. The idea that a person can be charged twice, report that. Talk about that. The appellate court took a look at our motions. We submitted it to them. Focus. Stop focusing on sensational stuff. These are not tabloid papers. Focus on the real stuff. Is it right for a person to be punished twice?
All right, I grew up in New Jersey, so when you challenge me, I'm going to accept that challenge. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Now, when we talk about, you know, issues like this, there's really two pieces to it, right? When we make arguments, it's about the facts and then the law, right? Well, the law tonight is going to be really the Constitution, double jeopardy, you know, but you got to understand what the facts are in the case to figure out about what happened here. So let's try to get to the bottom of some of the facts, because I don't think it's 100% clear tonight, but it'll be clearer in just a moment, because Court TV legal correspondent Joy Lim Nakrin is with us and has been going through everything related to this crazy procedural history in this case. So he's making allegations, and you know, when you listen to him, seems to make some sense, yeah, right? And it has nothing to do with the guilt or innocence of this guy. It has to do with whether or not he was punished once already. So what happened in this initial first prosecution? What were you able to figure out?
Okay, so this is a really, really complicated procedural history, like you pointed out. So initially, remember that this was Kim Foxx's office who was handling the prosecution, and then there were these kind of rumors surfaced that Kim Foxx was a relative of Jussie Smollett, which she says isn't true, that Kim Foxx was in communication with Jussie Smollett, which again, she says wasn't true. So she ended up recusing herself. And by the way, she had made statements that she thought it was overcharged internally to her office. But about a week after she recused herself, and the timeline, by the way, a lot of this is stated in the prosecution's objection to the emergency motion. They address a lot of this. Then the prosecutor's office actually obtained the jury indictment about a week after her recusal on 16 counts of disorderly conduct. Okay, and then March of 2019, the prosecutor's office then moves to no longer prosecute all 16 counts. They basically dismiss it, and I guess the Latin phrase is nol nole pros, right?
Right, okay. So they decide not to prosecute the case. Under what basis? What was happening at the time? When I was a prosecutor, we indict someone, we want to dismiss the case. Well, maybe we put you into a diversionary program, right? We called it PTI in New Jersey. So we went in front of a judge, and the judge would say, okay, we'll hold this whole case in abeyance. You do X, Y, and Z, you do X, Y, and Z. We'll come back in court, and then we'll dismiss it, and you're good to go. Did something like that happen?
Well, not really. And actually, there's a lot of debate about what did happen between both sides, because the state essentially says, okay, at that particular time, there wasn't the evidence that we needed, that we felt was appropriate to go forward with prosecuting, so we didn't prosecute. So we dismissed the charges. But then later on, they come back, they appoint the special prosecutor, they go forward with the charges.
Wait, okay, so so the first one just gets dismissed because they feel like they don't, so it doesn't get dismissed pursuant to a deal. He's talking about a deal. He said, wait a minute, you dismissed it because I paid a fine, meaning Jussie Smollett, and I did some community service. That sounds like a deal.
Right, it does sound like a deal. It sounds like a plea deal, but that isn't in the court documents. I looked at the court documents, Julia Janae looked at the court documents, many members of our team here at Court TV. That's not in the court documents. What is in the court documents is that there was a $10,000 bond that he paid, and then when the charges were dropped, it's basically like, you can keep this. It's kind of like, oh, okay, drop the charges, keep the $10,000.
The fine that he allegedly paid was just not getting his bond back, the $10,000.
That's right. So it's not a fine,
right? According
to the state. According to the defense, it was a fine, and so that was a penalty.
Okay.
Serving a sentence. And
how about the community service?
That's another good point. One side says, of course, the state says, he volunteered to do community service, and the other says it was a form of a sentence, a punishment.
So the defense is saying, no, it was a part of the deal, it was the punishment, you have to do community service, whereas the prosecutors now are saying, no, it was like he said, well, I'll do some. So did he do any community service?
He did.
Is there a record of it? How does that? Where does that record exist?
Yeah.
Do we know?
Well, so there isn't a dispute about whether he did community service. I guess the dispute is that one side is saying that it was a sentence, essentially, right, as part of a plea deal, and the other side is saying he volunteered to do it.
Okay.
So it's kind of in
gray area. We're in gray area here, factually.
Very gray area.
Okay, all right. Anything else we need to know about the procedural history here?
Well, I think that's really the key thing. And so, like you pointed out, if the guy's already served a sentence, a per se sentence, then there is an issue of double jeopardy. Then he can't go to trial again and be convicted again, which is what he did. But the state's saying no.
I can almost pick, it's like a backroom deal is what it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. It's like a backroom deal.
Wow, okay. All right, Joy Lim Nakrin, thank you so much. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. In the Bronx, New York, criminal defense attorney Renee Hill. In Houston, Texas, criminal defense attorney Carmen Rowe, in green for St. Paddy's Day. But I see Frank Sinatra, he's Italian. And in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney and law professor at Emory University and Georgia Innocence Project board member, Molly Palmer. Welcome, everyone. Okay. All right. I tried to set it up for you guys, trying to get to the bottom of it. There are some facts, I guess, in dispute, but What does it sound like to you, Renee Hill? Does it sound like he's being punished twice for the same crime and may be able to make an argument that this second prosecution should be tossed and the whole thing is over?
It does indeed sound like that to me, Vinnie. It is shades of the Bill Cosby case all over again. It sounds like deals were made, the defendant relied upon those deals, and then they turned around and they re-indicted him and ultimately tried him. And it sounds like double jeopardy might actually be a major issue in this case. And let me say this as well. A lot of people are complaining that he's out now, that, you know, he's only out because he's a celebrity. Bail pending appeal is only granted when the appellate court believes that there are viable issues, that there are issues that have merit. So they have looked at these papers and they've made that determination that there is some meat to what they're saying. And that's why he got bail pending appeal, not because he's a celebrity. That's my opinion of this.
Well, yeah. No, maybe it's not the celebrity, but it's the ability to do what he's doing. And that really comes more from the money than the celebrity, right? Because he has the ability to hire. Do you see that legal team he's got? He's got an amazing legal team.
He has an amazing legal team who is taking the necessary steps to fight for him as they are charged to do as his attorneys, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that he has, you know, been blessed with the finances from working hard all of his life to be in that position and now use those funds to pay for attorneys to fight for him and point out the issues that every defendant has.
Absolutely.
I've had clients out on bail pending appeal, non-celebrities and celebrities as well. But it's not because of that. When it comes to the appellate courts, it's not because of the celebrityhood. It's because they want to see viable issues, because if they don't, they're not going to grant that bail. Look at R. Kelly. I'm sure he's got more money than Justice Smollett.
He is infamous. He is not famous anymore. He was infamous.
But at that time, he wasn't out on bail, and he certainly didn't get bail pending appeal after the conviction.
Carmen, your thoughts tonight? Is this double jeopardy tonight?
You know, that's a firm maybe, Vinnie. My problem is when lawyers come out and tell me that we need to rely on them to determine whether a deal was had or not, and they suggest that a $10,000 bond is somehow a fine, I feel like we're playing a little too fast and loose with the facts on that case. And so the real issue is whether or not they have anything that memorializes a deal here. Because as a defense attorney, the community service doesn't move me, because I do that for a lot of cases in the hopes of getting a deal. I tell my client to do some things ahead of time. I offer it to a prosecutor, but they don't accept it, then I don't have a deal. So this will come down to those fine, detailed facts as to what exactly happened and what those discussions turned into as regards a solid deal. And if they didn't, I think they have a problem when they get to the appellate courts.
Molly, I want your thoughts on this, and then I want you to also answer this question. If he wins on this basis, it's game over, right? This trial, it's over. It's not like most appeals, you win, you get a new trial. No, he wins this one, it's over. There will not be another trial.
If he wins, it's over and it's done, right? So here is what I think this whole thing hinges on. It's the definition of punishment. Sometimes we think about double jeopardy as not being tried for the same offense. Well, that's a different kind of interpretation of the due process clause of the Fifth Amendment. What it also says is that you cannot be punished twice. We see this in multiplicitous charges, duplicitous charges, or in this case, where his attorneys are arguing he already was punished. So if the appellate court interprets the forfeiture of the bond and his community service as punishment, then it's done, he wins, and like you said, Vinnie, game over.
Wow, wow. All right, we accepted the challenge. I think we met the challenge. We have some great analysis here, and I think it's really going to hinge on some facts that are not 100% clear. But what is clear is that the think tank's here the whole hour. Renee Hill, Carmen Rowe, Molly Parmer. By the way, the latest episode of the Court TV podcast now available. This week, Court TV's Chanley Painter joins me as we break down, of course, the Jussie Smollett sentencing and Smollett's outburst inside that courtroom. Take a listen. We are talking about Jussie Smollett and his sentence to jail, 150 days, his reaction in the courtroom. Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent, still with me. She was there inside the courtroom for this entire hearing, this bizarre day in criminal justice. How would you describe what happened that day in Chicago?
Atypical, This was an over 5-hour sentencing hearing for a very low-level felony. But the conclusion of it is absolutely rare and bizarre. I don't know about you, Vinnie. I'd like to hear if you've ever heard of a defendant who has had such an outburst without being called down by the judge or his attorneys. He could have stood up as long as he wanted to, it seemed like, in the courtroom to say whatever he wanted to say.
You can find the Court TV podcast wherever you listen, and it's always available on courttv.com. We'll be right back.
What did you say to her when this subject matter came up?
It's not the business you want to be in.
Big witness, big moment in Memphis, Tennessee today. That is the prosecution's star witness, one of the co-conspirators in the case, turning state's evidence in the murder trial of Lorenzen Wright. This case, to really understand it, I want to just go through the relationships of 4 people who are really the center of this entire story, what it's all about. And it begins with our victim. The victim is Lorenzen Wright. Here he is. He's a retired NBA star. Was last seen alive July 18th, 2010. He was visiting his children at his ex-wife's home in Tennessee. 10 days later, his body was found with bullets in it. Okay? He is the center focus. He is the victim in this case. Now, there's someone else, and we talked a little bit about her last night. The ex-wife that he was visiting, Shara Wright. Okay? She pleaded guilty to facilitation in this case back in 2019. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She's the reason, according to prosecutors, that Lorenzen Wright is dead, because she's the ex-wife. She wanted him dead. Now, there's someone else very important in this case, this trial, the defendant, Billy Ray Turner. Okay? Prosecutors say that this man, Billy Ray Turner, the defendant, was recruited by Shara Wright to kill Lorenzen for insurance money, and also intimated that there was some sort of a relationship going on between the defendant and the victim's ex-wife. Final character tonight, Jimmy Martin is his name. He is the cousin of Shara, the ex-wife of our victim. He's the cousin, the unindicted co-conspirator. He was part of this entire plot, but he's gotten immunity from it. But don't worry, he's locked up. He murdered somebody else as well, so he's locked up for that. But he, Jimmy Martin, is really the key witness for prosecutors in the case against Billy Ray Turner. They called him to the stand today. Let's take a listen.
After that, they get into a brainstorming session on, well, if we do this, how best to do it.
And is this at the house?
This is at the house.
Is there anybody else at the house?
I would say it was me, Billy, Shara, and a pregnant lady.
You say Billy. Who's Billy?
That's what I know him as Billy.
Okay.
But
and how did you know him at all?
Through Shara.
Through Shara. And did you know what his relationship to Shara was?
No.
Do you remember details about ways y'all talked about?
I mean, there was a lot of details, but yeah, I remember some details.
What are the details? I know this is 12 years ago, but what are the details you remember?
It was like just, you got to catch them somewhere where there ain't a lot of people.
Did you ever stand up in the middle of the meeting and, throw your arms up and say, this is crazy, I'm running out the door and going to the police?
No.
No. Did Billy Turner, did he ever stand up, throw his arms up and say, this is crazy, I'm running out and going to the police?
No.
And the pregnant female?
No.
And obviously Miss Wright didn't either?
No.
Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter joining us live tonight from Memphis, Tennessee. Chanley, great to see you. What was the reaction today when Jimmy Martin walked into that courtroom, or maybe kind of shuffled in, I don't know, to testify today when he took the stand?
Well, first of all, he walked in with a handful of extra bailiffs. As you mentioned, he is in custody for a different conviction, serving time on another murder. So those deputies sat on the front row of the gallery. It was noticeable behind them some more family members of Turner, Billy Ray Turner, the defendant, there in court today. That was interesting. However, they wouldn't speak to the media. But inside Jimmy Martin, it was almost as if he and Billy Ray Turner would make occasional eye contact. I can't confirm it, but it looked to me, sitting in the gallery, that sometimes they would almost have a stare down between each other inside the courtroom. And of course, then when the jury entered, they knew who this witness was. They know how important this witness is to the prosecution's case. They were leaning in, taking a lot of notes as he detailed this months-long plot to kill Lorenzen Wright, saying that Shara Wright, his cousin, called all the shots and that Billy Ray Turner was a key part of this conspiracy. And he didn't make it through all of his testimony. He's still on the stand, but a lot of damaging facts so far, including an attempt on Lorenzen Wright's life in Atlanta in June 2010. Vinnie, that was mentioned today, but it was just a great detail that he was going through in describing what happened in those weeks leading up to Lorenzen's murder, and this jury was taking note of all of it. In the gallery, Deborah Marion, the mother of Lorenzen Wright, sat there. She was taking it in. She did mention to me as she left court earlier this evening that what she's heard so far, Vinnie, is just confirming to her that Jimmy Martin had nothing to do with the actual murder, that he was a key part in the planning and the cleanup, but it was still Billy Ray Turner.
Okay. How about those coded messages? Is he able to explain to this jury and decipher these coded messages we've been talking about in this case?
Yeah, Vinnie, that was huge for the prosecution because most of the day we had the cell phone expert going over those messages. So here we have Jimmy Martin corroborating the prosecution's contention that there were coded messages between him and Shira Wright about planning a party. For example, one of those messages from Jay Martin said that there's 300 USD left. The concert is in Florida. You want me to go to the party, adult theme, but the party has kids. When are you going to do an all-adult party, and how to plan around that? Well, here is part of his testimony where the prosecutor's walking him through messages like that, Vinnie, and he's explaining what they were really talking about. Let's watch.
I was like, man, is it 21 and over, meaning don't have anybody around?
Okay, so you mean nobody around at all?
At all.
Okay. So you aren't necessarily talking about kids?
We're talking about kids as in kids, but...
Okay. Could we almost replace that word kids with witnesses?
Correct.
No witnesses around?
Correct.
We got to plan a party without witnesses and how to plan around that.
Correct.
So again, he's telling this prosecutor, Vinnie, that was a plot to kill Lorenzen. That was the party. That's what it was about. The equipment were the handguns and the money that they were exchanging back and forth. Now, he is going to resume his testimony tomorrow morning. He's still on direct. He still hasn't gotten to the part of the days and weeks leading up to the actual murder of Lorenzen in July 2010, Vinnie.
All right, so that cross-examination still to come. That's going to be huge. Chanley Painter in Memphis. Thank you, Chanley. We'll speak again. Let's bring back in our think tank Renee Hill, Carmen Rowe, Molly Palmer. Carmen, he hasn't been crossed yet, but, you know, I'm watching him on direct, and he's not, I mean, he's a convicted killer, so I guess I'm not going to be impressed by him, but, you know, he's brought into this whole thing by Shara. It seems pretty clear that there's communications going on here.
Sure, Vinnie. My question is, where was his cell phone? I mean, he's a convicted killer, and they gave him immunity in this case.
He was nowhere near there. He wasn't there. Wasn't there the day of the killing. He was planning it, but didn't do it.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think they have him on the ropes that they're giving this guy immunity, a convicted killer who will never be prosecuted for his role in the death of this victim. And I think that's concerning enough, but I'm going to wait and see exactly what they do on cross, because again, I think he could be, and very well may be, much more involved than the state wants him to be. And in this case, without him, they didn't have much at all. So he's a critical witness.
He's crucial. Molly, I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye as he was testifying, you were like salivating, just wanting the opportunity to cross-examine this guy. What is that cross-examination going to be like? Because if he had to face someone like you, I don't know if he lasts.
Oh, well, I'm flattered. But here's the thing. He is an incentivized informant, which is one of the leading causes of wrongful convictions. And whenever you have someone on the stand who's been given a deal of any kind, some incentive to do this, to testify, you get into that. And what Carmen just said, not just any deal, absolute immunity for somebody who has already murdered, the depths with which the crossing defense attorney is going to go through that. I mean, it's yet to be seen, but it's going to be incredibly intense for Jimmy Martin. I mean, it's unbelievable that he's supposed to be the bastion of credibility in this trial. He's their star witness. To me, his credibility is zero. And that's what the defense is going to show
we prosecutors don't get to pick our witnesses. Our witnesses are always picked by the defendants, by the killers. All right.
Well, they picked that that immunity, though. They picked that, they
well,
picked
we
that
had
deal.
to. He wasn't there. All right, still ahead.
He wasn't there.
On the docket tonight in Chula Vista, California, mother of three, Maya Miliete, has been missing for more than a year. She has never been found, but investigators say her husband Larry had a cast spell on Maya and have now charged him with her murder. Plus, the NYPD sends out a wanted poster for a woman wanted for being involved in prostitution and theft, but they put the wrong person on the poster. And now that Instagram influencer is suing the NYPD for $30 million. Tonight's 13th juror question: how much do you think the case is worth?
Five now.
On the docket tonight, the tragic story of missing mom Maya Millette, her husband Larry charged with her murder. Here's the story.
Larry was trying to hold on to May, and he resorted to contacting what are called spellcasters.
A really bizarre twist in the case of missing mom Maya Millette, also known as May. Her husband Larry was allegedly trying to cast a spell on her.
He was asking for May to become incapacitated, for May to be in an accident, to have broken bones so that she could stay at home.
The DA says Larry sent daily messages to his spellcaster, trying to bring harm to his wife and the man he suspected she was seeing. All this revealed on the day prosecutors charged Larry with Maya's murder and outlined what they say happened in the early morning hours of January 8th, 2021.
Security video retained by Chula Vista PD showed the defendant on January 8th at 5:58 a.m. in the morning moving his Lexus GX460, a black Lexus. The Lexus was already backed into the driveway, but Larry Millette repositioned that Lexus where the back of the Lexus is in the entrance of that garage. He repositioned it where no video camera can capture whether a body was put in the back of the Lexus or not. After repositioning the car at 5:58 a.m., Larry leaves and he does not return to the house for 11 hours and 21 minutes.
The story of Larry and Maya Millette goes back many years. They were high school sweethearts. They got married and were raising a family in a wonderful neighborhood in Chula Vista, California. But before her disappearance, their relationship was beginning to fall apart, something Larry admits.
We got into a kind of an argument, and we've been having like problems, for about a year.
And just before she disappeared, Maya had called an attorney about a divorce. Mary Chris Drulier is Maya's sister, and she revealed this fact on Court TV.
My sister was ready to leave the relationship. The relationship has been struggling, and I think she was ready to move on and hoping to start a new life. She did file for divorce, the day she was last seen.
While Larry has been charged with Maya's murder, she has never been found. She disappeared on January 7th, 2021, and when she first went missing, Larry spoke publicly, telling his version of what happened.
On Saturday morning, when her parents came by, her door was locked. I found the keys to the bedroom, and I opened it, and she was already gone. So maybe she went to a morning sunrise hike. After that, at night, we're okay. She hasn't come home yet. The latest she would be home like 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning. After that, it's kind of like out of the ordinary.
But parts of his story never made sense to Maya's family. What also never made sense to them was the fact that Larry never joined the family in the countless searches for his wife.
We have a whole community, the community of Chula Vista. People around the world know this story. You cannot hide. This whole story is going to follow you. The kids are going to ask questions one day when they grow up and start thinking for themselves.
Sorry.
Were you out there looking for mommy when she went disappearing? Where were you at, Dad?
So, as Larry Millette waits for his next court date, the question is, will investigators find Maya's body before a jury hears the case? Let's bring back in our think tank as we get ready for this trial. Renee Hill, Carmen Rowe, Molly Palmer with us. Renee Hill, the most shocking fact that came out when they announced these charges was that he was having someone cast spells on her. If prosecutors call a spellcaster into the courtroom. What is that cross-examination going to be like? I mean, I've never seen this in a criminal case.
I've never seen anything like this before, Vinnie. And I think that if the prosecutors bring in the spellcaster, it's almost going to be like Comedy Central. I think the defense team is going to have a great time with this witness, just going through, what spellcasters actually do. I think, trying to poke holes at whether or not this is really credible science, what it is. I just think that it's going to turn into sort of a deviation from what this case really should be about. And that's whether or not the defendant committed the crimes that he's accused of.
Well, Carmen, one thing the prosecutor pointed out is that it really gets into his mindset, what he was saying to this spellcaster.
Vinnie, that's what I think is so interesting is the leap that they make from him going to a spellcaster to get his wife to stay home and be closer to him, to need him, to making that a homicidal ideation, which is what the prosecutor speculates about.
It's about jealousy.
That's not what he wanted his spell people to do. What he wanted them to do was to make her stay home.
Yeah, stay home so she couldn't see the guy that he was suspecting that she was seeing.
That was not what the spell people were doing. They wanted her to be sick or ill or need him. He wanted his wife to need him, to want him, and to stay home with him. To me, I don't get to the next level of that means he killed her. At best, that's an accident. Maybe he was trying to break her legs and something else happened. I don't know. But it doesn't mean to me that he had the intent to kill her.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was an accident because I think there were some gunshots, but they haven't found her body, Molly. That's a big, big part of this case as well.
Yeah, I mean, this case is entirely built on circumstantial evidence. I mean, the spell people, I like the spell people. The spell people is just one piece that makes this so tenuous, right? I agree with Carmen. It doesn't go to motive, in my opinion. The way that the prosecutor describes moving the vehicle, I mean, how many times does somebody reposition their car for any other number of reasons, right? And then lastly, there's no body. To me, at this point, I don't see any way, especially without the body, that this can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard. The fact that he didn't search for her.
I disagree with you, but because he was gone for 11 hours. He was gone for 11 hours. Where did he go? Where did he go? And he made up a whole story that makes no sense. All right, folks, take a look. We've got a preliminary exam for readiness on May 12th, then the prelim on June 27th. And at the prelim, we may learn a lot more about this case as we hear some more of the evidence that prosecutors have, and we'll see where the defense goes on their cross-examination. When we come back, there was a woman in New York was plastered on a wanted poster by the NYPD. She was wanted for something related to prostitution and theft, but it wasn't her. They put a picture of an innocent woman on there. We've blacked out the face, so no more damage is done, but she's suing the NYPD for $30 million. Your reaction next.
List at Nix.com.
All right, this wanted poster sent out by the NYPD for a woman involved in prostitution and theft. But the picture they put was a completely innocent person, an Instagram influencer. We blacked out her face so we wouldn't do any more damage. And she is suing the NYPD for $30 million. I posted and asked you what you thought the case was worth. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day. That comes from Melissa. She should prove what it cost her, how much she would have made until her reputation was ruined, and then be given the money she lost or would have made. Carmen Rowe, that's not always so easy to prove future earnings as an Instagram influencer, is it?
Well, and that's not how this is going to work, because emotional distress and other things are part of this lawsuit. It's not just about lost wages, but she is an influencer. Branding and reputation is everything. And listen, this is New York City. We expect better. We got to have better. This is totally unacceptable. I
have to correct you. It's New York City on this show. Right, Renee? It's New York on this show.
New York.
New York. All right. Kim tonight. She should definitely get compensated for it. I wouldn't begin to guess how much. 30 million sounds like way too much, but I would say somewhere around 25,000. Molly, would you go a little higher?
30 million. The police making a mistake again.
Stop defunding the police again, Molly. Stop.
Listen, the police, they make all kind of grievous errors and nothing ever happens. So yeah, go after them for 30 million because they said you were a thieving prostitute and you weren't. Yes, 30 million, not 25,000. As much as you can get, girl. Go after it.
Wow. Renee's got to pay it though because she's paying taxes over there. Tracy, somehow we've come to a place where every time someone's feelings get hurt, they head to an attorney's office to see how much their hurt feelings are worth. I'm not saying this doesn't deserve something, but 30 million seems like overreaching. Renee, you're the one who's going to have to pay. How much are you going to give her?
Listen, this is more than someone's feelings being hurt. Just like we said here, you know, what Molly said, what Carmen said, her reputation has been disparaged. She's out. We don't know how this is going to affect how she moves forward. So absolutely go high, and then you find out where you land. You're not going to start off saying, well, I'll just go with $1 million. You're going to go for the highest that you can, and then let that number be evaluated and determined.
And what's
absolutely, you got to go for what you think you're worth.
Right. This is the old
saying. If you don't think you're worth it, who else will? Right?
Where do you go to get your reputation back? And when you're an influencer, your reputation is your business. And she said she went back on Instagram, and people were not believing her that it wasn't her, that it was a mistake, and it was. Please admit that. Oh, we got Karen tonight. Karen, zero. Once you put something on the internet, it's out there forever for anyone to use. How about that, Carmen? She posts her picture on Instagram and things are gonna happen.
Vinnie, that's awful. Come on. She puts an image out there of her going to a party and she turns into a liar, a prostitute, and a person who steals from other people. Too much, too soon.
Wanted posted by the police?
Yeah.
Come on.
All right.
It's awful.
And finally, Luke,
Karen.
I don't know what the market value of defamation of character in a place like New York City is, but I'm sure she'll get paid something. We have about 10 seconds, Molly. She's going to get some money.
I mean, I hope so, but to be honest, Vinnie, you know, police are fairly untouchable, so I'm not going to hold my breath.
All right. Renee Hill, Carmen Rowe, Molly Palmer, awesome job. We'll see you again real soon. Appreciate all your help. When we come back, folks, top of the hour, we've got a story involving a woman who is missing. Hannah Choi is her name, but police already, even though she's not been found, believe she's dead, and they're searching for her ex-boyfriend. In Fairfax, Virginia, 35-year-old Hannah Choi disappeared on March 6th, but police believe she is dead, and her boyfriend, Joel Marino, has been charged with her murder, but Marino has not been arrested. And tonight, the manhunt for this accused killer continues.
We have them on video the night before in the Springfield area, along Backlick Road, to be precise. We know they were together. We've confirmed that through a variety of data points. And this was an emergency circumstance. Our effort was to find Hannah alive.
In tonight's Unsolved Case File in Sarasota, Florida, 14-year-old Jabez Spann witnesses a murder, then disappears. And then a year and a half later, Jabez is found dead, and now his family is still searching for justice.
It takes a certain kind of monster to kill a child anyways. And then the silent code, I'm not talking, this a child, that's a whole different ballpark. Ain't no snitching rules in that.
In Detroit, Michigan, a drunk driver gets in a fatal crash while being followed by police, but why didn't police activate their lights or siren? We take a look with our own law enforcement experts. And in Flagler County, Florida, a wild chase as a suspect crashes into a patrol car, then takes off on foot. We take a look at the video during crime time. Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of Closing Arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. As we sit here tonight, there is a search for a missing woman. Her name is Hannah Choi. But there's also a search for her ex-boyfriend. He's wanted for her murder. And this is a case that first time we looked at it, we were like, what's going on here? She's missing. How do they know that they're searching now for a suspected murderer and looking for a body and not a live person? It's incredibly tragic, but the chief, Kevin Davis from the Fairfax County Police Department, addressed the media, addressed the public, outlining what they know and what sort of help that they need at this point. So let's take a listen.
We believe that Joel Marino, Joel, last name Marino, Merino, 27 years old, killed his live-in former girlfriend, Hannah Choi. Hannah, common spelling, Choi, C-H-O-I. We have, in partnership with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, obtained arrest warrants charging Joel Marino with second-degree murder and disposal of a body. We have not yet arrested Joel Marino. We're searching for him. Bureau Chief Major Ed O'Carroll will go into that in just a moment. We believe Joel Marino killed Hannah inside of the Alexandria home that they lived in together. We believe that Joel Marino took Hannah's body and disposed her body in a park in Prince George's County, Maryland, Piscataway Park. In fact, our search and rescue team has been all over searching and continuing to search for Hannah's body in the park in Piscataway in Prince George's County, Maryland, just over the bridge and to the south. That search and rescue effort remains ongoing. Major O'Carroll will describe to you the vehicle that we found afterwards that we believe Joel discarded, but with an abundance of probable cause and an abundance of evidence, we worked with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and secured these arrest warrants, and now the search for Joel Marino is underway. This is a murder warrant without the recovery of our victim yet. That's unusual in this profession.
What initially started as a missing persons investigation a little more than a week ago has turned in to a homicide investigation. Our victim, 35-year-old Hannah Choi, did nothing wrong. She was the victim of foul play. She was the victim of violence, a victim of murder, and we know the suspect. Hannah knew her killer. This is a domestic-related homicide, as the chief laid out. The alleged suspect The alleged killer enjoys a presumption of innocence, like all the defendants that we talk about, even while he is on the run. There has been and is mounting compelling evidence that led us to an abundance of probable cause, and that probable cause led us to obtain 2 arrest warrants, 1 for second-degree murder and 1 for felony disposal of human remains. Hannah Choi, a bright, caring, amazing young woman with the world at her reach, was reported missing to us on Sunday, March 6th. She was last seen on Saturday, March 5th, at her home in the 5300 block of Jesmond Street, which is in the Alexandria area of Kingstown here in Fairfax County. Friends arrived at Miss Cho's home on March 6th, about a week ago Sunday, but she did not answer the door. She missed several appointments, was very unlike her, and she could not be reached. Her friends contacted law enforcement out of the serious concern for her well-being. Our officers, our patrol officers, rapidly responded, ultimately checked the house, and the house appeared generally to be in order, except for bedding, which appeared to be missing from one of the bedrooms. Based on her sudden and unexpected disappearance, detective from our Major Crimes Bureau launched an active missing persons investigation. Through interviews, an abundance of interviews with family and friends and neighbors, detectives discovered that Ms. Choi may have had an argument on Saturday, March 5th, with Joel Marino, 27, of Alexandria. We know they were in the community that evening together. Video surveillance supports that. Detectives do believe at some point something happened that resulted in a significant injury to Hannah. Detectives believe Marino then removed Hannah from the home and transported her to another location. Now, we have identified the vehicle that we believed was operated by Marino that night and into the next day. We've located that vehicle in Washington, D.C. on March 7th. It is evidence in the case and has been and currently being processed by our forensics team, our cyber and forensics division. A search warrant was executed in that on that vehicle, in that car, and again, it remains housed at our evidence center. Although Hannah was not found, we did discover evidence that suggests she was harmed prior to her disappearance.
Extremely unusual, as law enforcement pointed out there, that he's been charged with the murder. They haven't found her yet. They're looking for her, obviously, on one part of this investigation, and the other part is trying to track down Joel Marino, the accused murderer, the ex-boyfriend. All right, let's bring in our guest tonight. Joining me in Clearwater, Florida, private investigator Mike Peasley. In Chicago, Illinois, private investigator Erica Morse. And joining us by phone tonight in Alexandria, Virginia, Hannah's sister, Mina, is with us. Mina Choi. Mina, thank you so much for joining us, and our thoughts, everyone here at Court TV and the whole show team, everyone, our thoughts are with you and your family tonight. How's everybody holding up?
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing light to this case. We're sort of in a desperate, situation here where we are, fluctuating between, grief and disbelief and shock, and just, we would love to shed light onto this case and bring it to the public's attention, because, it's unfathomable to us, and anything we can do to sort of bring justice to my sister and understand exactly what happened and get some sense of closure would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Tell us about Hannah. For those of us that never met, we heard a brief description, but I want to hear you tell us and everyone listening tonight about your sister.
Yeah, of course. She was amazing. I'm the little sister. But if I had one word to describe her, and anyone who really knows her, it would probably be Superwoman. She was brave, she was strong, she was ambitious, she was independent, and an entrepreneur down to her very core. She paved her own path through life and had a resilience and a capacity for hard work that was just unmatched. She was also very social. She loved talking to people. She loved entertaining people. She always had, colorful stories that could just light up a room. I know that a lot of our friends and family are extremely devastated to have lost such a, beautiful and colorful and wonderful soul. And she just, first and foremost, I think above all, she was a real advocate, for all her friends and loved ones. She just, if I was ever in trouble or if any of her friends were ever in trouble, she'd be the first to be there, right by your side, facing any challenge with you head on. And that was really the embodiment of what was important to her and, in every facet of her life, whether, personally, professionally, or, in any other avenue she chose to, enjoy. It's very much a big loss for not just ourselves, but, for the larger community here.
Amazing description. Really an amazing description. I hate to say his name, but because he is on the run or on the loose or wherever he is, I have to say his name tonight. Joel Marino, did you know him at all? Did you talk to your sister about him and what type of person he was and what may have been going on in their relationship?
Yeah, so I'd only sort of seen him in passing. Being the little sister, she's always the one protecting me. She's always, the one giving me advice. She tries to, we also had so many other things that we connected on so many other levels. She led a very interesting and fulfilling life. And so it wasn't their sort of relationship, him and their relationship wasn't really much that we spoke about. So unfortunately, I can't really shed too much light on him or speak to his character. But
I'll tell you what, though. The fact that she didn't speak to you much about him probably speaks volumes about what may have been going on there. Mina, we have two great investigators who are with us, and I want to bring them into our conversation here. Mike Peasley, your thoughts tonight. This is very unusual, the way this is all transpiring, because we're still searching for Hannah, but now we're also looking for a suspected killer. Your thoughts on this investigation and where you think investigators are in all of this and what they've been able to release so far and so convinced that this is a murder already.
Thanks for having me on, Vinnie. Couple of things that were interesting to me when I was looking at this, especially being retired law enforcement. They used some words in this, alleged and presumed, and yet when they're doing their interview and giving a statement, it's like they have more than what we're seeing. And so for me, I would want to take a look at everything that they have. That car didn't just all of a sudden show up someplace. He had to get a ride out of there. And I find it sort of interesting that they keep using this word over and over. So my question is, what evidence do they have? Obviously they took the vehicle and they obtained a search warrant for that vehicle. So when they say the house wasn't disturbed, but the bed sheets were taken out of there, some of this stuff I find it interesting as far as where they're at with this investigation and what don't we know.
Eric, go ahead, continue.
No, that's fine. Somebody had to pick him up. And again, without having a background on him and knowing a little bit more about this, they don't have a body. You said it right up front. They don't have a body right now. And I'm sort of at awe about this whole, what evidence? The evidence keeps throwing up in my head here about what do they have either they're not sharing with the family or we don't know yet.
Absolutely. Erica Morse, your thoughts tonight. There's 2 investigations going on here, right? We've got a search for a suspected killer, but we're also still looking for Hannah.
Correct. I always want to start by just saying a word to the family. Mina, I am so terribly sorry for what y'all are going through. You are in the worst hurry up and wait mode right now. The one thing I will say is that the entire focus for the community and for the family needs to be on finding this fugitive. Law enforcement clearly has the on-site search covered. They are doing an amazing job searching that park. They have clearly developed an abundance of evidence, both physical and probable cause from based on what I've been seeing, because we have not 1, but 2 charges. The disposal of human remains tells me there is probably physical and DNA evidence already that exists. There's some type of forensic evidence they've already been able to confirm. So the focus right now for the family and for the community is to get this man's face out there and to not stop until he is found. Get every single photographic angle, every single picture, put a collage together. He has multiple social media accounts. I found 5 alone just in an early background or a simple background. Pull everyone you can because you need facial hair, you need highlighted hair or lightened hair, you need thinner, you need heavier, you need different types of seasons, you need different types of clothing, hats, if there's balding at all. You want every possible physical angle and potential look that he might use to disguise himself and fly under the radar. You want flyers everywhere. You want a social media page and a website if need be. I believe we're dealing with the cross state lines here because we're talking about Virginia and Maryland. I'm hoping the FBI and state police are involved in this already. If not, encourage that involvement. But above all, self-care right now for you is so important, honey. And it sounds like you have a good support system, and I hope that you have a victim's advocate with the PD.
Okay, Mina, we're going to stay on this story like we do with all these unsolved cases. We'll be calling on you again, and hopefully next time we speak, Joelle is in custody, and we have found your sister. Mina, thank you so much. Mike Peasley, Erica Moore staying with us. When we come back, we'll open up tonight's unsolved case file.
officially licensed everything.
It is time to open up tonight's unsolved case file. This is where we ask for your help in giving answers to investigators and bringing justice to families who deserve it. Tonight's case comes to us from our great affiliate WFTS down in Tampa, Florida. Wendy Lane, the reporter, talking about a 14-year-old boy named Jabez.
Every day that go on that no one's been arrested, the harder it get. A lot of pain. A lot of pain.
The 14-year-old went missing after a Labor Day barbecue near his home on September 4th, 2017. His remains were found 18 months later on the side of a Manatee County road.
Nobody has got away. They may think they have, but they have not got away for taking the life of our baby.
It's still unclear what led up to his death. Investigators say Jabez may have witnessed a murder before his disappearance.
It takes a certain kind of monster to kill a child anyways. And then the silent code, I'm not talking, this a child, that's a whole different ballpark. Ain't no snitching rules in that.
Sarasota police once again are urging anyone with information to come forward. A $50,000 reward remains in place for tips leading to an arrest.
They have took this case as if it's their own child. They done been there for us more than the community have.
Jake says her family's faith and determination to find who did this is what has gotten them through.
And you gotta ask God to help give you the strength to continue every day.
Okay, somebody knows something. Time to call. 941-366-TIPS. That's the Sarasota Crime Stoppers number. There's a reward for information, but you shouldn't need a reward, but fine. Go for the reward too. Do the right thing. 941-366-TIPS is the number. Still with us, private investigators Mike Peasley and Erica Morse. And joining us now in Tampa, Florida, special guests, Jabez's mother, Tawana Spann Butler, and her husband, Joe, both with us.
Just go ahead and start talking.
Great to see you both. Tawana, I want to start with you. And she's got to get her earpiece in. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll take a moment.
Sorry.
We'll take a moment.
Okay.
All right.
You're good.
How are you doing? Is there any new information that you've gotten from law enforcement? Does it seem like anything is heating up since we last spoke?
No, it just seems like we're kind of at a standstill with everything, and they're still following up on different leads that's coming in. But as of right now, it just seems like we're basically kind of at a standstill, just missing that one vital information.
And Joe, this is one that we know somebody knows something, and somebody could pick up that phone tonight and end this all.
Well, Vinnie, I thoroughly believe as time progresses, it gets a little easier for some people to come out and tell what they know. Sometimes they become a little less fearful. So we're just daily praying that it touches somebody at some point to say, hey, you know what? This is too long. This should have been out, and just come forward.
Tawana, for people who haven't seen us profile this in the past, and maybe are watching for the first time tonight, let them know who Jabez is.
He's just the boy next door to you. He's the little boy that plays football, the little boy that plays with your kids, and the little jokester. He's grandma's baby. He's everybody's. He's that kid in the community that everybody knows. He's just that kid that everybody knows, and we're just hoping that somebody just at any given point is, if you're holding in any information, it has to be hard to hold that in, that they just kind of, it's enough, and just to give certain people a peace and a comfort, which is our family.
Erica Morse, I know we've talked about this one in the past. What are your thoughts tonight?
Thanks for having me back on this one, Vinnie. This one is probably the one that is bothering me the most of the 60 plus cases you and I have covered together. Joe, Tawana, I'm sorry to see you again under these circumstances, but I really want to talk about something we touched on last time. Joe, have you had a chance to talk with law enforcement about this town hall meeting that I suggested about law enforcement getting in there and promising protection to anyone who is willing to come forward and speak? Because I think that this is, Mom said this in the past, this is a community keeping quiet, and law enforcement has been on your side from day one. And I really, really want to see law enforcement offer some type of protection, because there were 3 men involved in the original killing of Travis Combs. And I think that if law enforcement can step up and reassure the community that that they will protect the person who comes forward and gives up this killer, this shooter, that you might get some answers here.
Thank you, Erica. We've been working very closely with law enforcement and law enforcement organizations just to try to bring help to families dealing with cases like this, as well as our own. But we are closely involved with law enforcement, with their different factions, just overall on safety, prevention, and how we can get these things solved.
Okay. Remember, we talked specifically, and this is why I'm so stuck on this, Joe. I had a case exactly like this. A young girl shot and killed in front of 300 witnesses. Nobody spoke up. The chief of police was there within a minute. Nobody spoke up because these kids were all minors and they were terrified. And back then, a lot of their parents told them to keep quiet because they didn't want their kids to be next. So what we had to do was actually get everybody together in a town hall meeting at a local church. And our chief of police had to come forward and offer protection to anyone who would speak up. That case was dormant for several years. We had it solved within 5 weeks of trying that tactic, and it worked. And so I believe strongly that if your local chief of police can do this, it might give enough reassurance for somebody to come forward.
Erica, on that note, I want to bring Mike Peasley in really quickly before we run out of time here. Mike, you're a former member of law enforcement in that general area. Your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, my heart goes out to all of you. It's a tragedy, and it hits home really hard. Yeah, my thoughts on that is you know, not only do the town meeting, but what's more important is look into that shooting that occurred that your son may have witnessed. Was that drug related, or was there something more there that people are being quiet over this? Because, you know, I have found over the years working homicides that, you know, that's the main reason that nobody wants to come forward, because they know what is happening within the city there where these shootings are occurring. So, yeah, the town hall meetings are great. The protection's great. But if I was looking into this, I would be looking at this other subject's background to find out, was he related into drugs, and see who he was associated with, and start working that angle to try to come up with some answers here.
Absolutely. We're out of time for tonight. Mike Peasley, Erica Morse, thank you so much. Tawana and Joe, we appreciate it. We'll be calling you again. And I know one of these times when we speak, we are going to have that news that you so much deserve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinnie.
Still ahead. In Detroit, Michigan, a drunk driver gets in a fatal crash while being followed by police. But why didn't police activate their lights or siren? We take a look with our own law enforcement experts. And in Flagler County, Florida, a wild chase as a suspect crashes into a patrol car, then takes off on foot. We take a look at the video during crime time.
Taser! Or
it is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, former Special Agent and Supervisor for the Department of Homeland Security, Dr. Jason Piccolo. Jason has served in law enforcement for over 20 years and was a U.S. Border Patrol agent, veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and has worked in human smuggling and international narcotics. Is the author of Out of the Shadows, the host of the Protectors podcast, and wearing his green tie tonight. Also with us, retired DEA Special Agent Ted Golden. Ted is a former Memphis police officer. He has 34 years of experience in law enforcement. He was with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 28 years. He's a trainer at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, and he is a consultant with the DeKalb County, Georgia Juvenile Court. Great to have you both here. This first story, and it's a really detailed investigation done by a great reporter, Ross Jones, with our affiliate WXYZ in Detroit. It involves a police chase that ends in a young woman's death. A lot to take a look at here. Let's watch.
I'm being advised of multiple auto accidents, same possible fatal there.
It's January 3rd, 2020, and Detroit Police Squad Car 836 is at the scene of a terrible crash on the city's west side. The driver, officers later learned, was drunk and blew through a red light. The damage was significant.
Holy man. Get my wife out, man. Please. Miss.
When it was over, 4 people would be hospitalized. The drunk driver, Linnell Dixon, would survive. His passenger would not. She was 21-year-old Miracle Jamerson, the mother of 3-year-old Terrell and Paula Gribble's daughter.
It's horrible. It's horrible to have to live through this. I would wish this on somebody I hated. I really would.
No one was more responsible for the devastation that night than Linnell Dixon, who was not only drunk but driving on a suspended license and tonight sits in prison. But an investigation would later find that Detroit police officers played a role in what happened too, with investigators concluding that their conduct was unethical and amounted to a cover-up.
I asked these questions for years and no one won't come forward with this information. You're the only person who answered our questions.
This is the dash cam video from that night, moments before the chase. Officer Hession Zamey's in the driver's seat and Officer Christopher Bush is the front passenger. In the back is another officer and a ride-along, Officer Zamey's cousin. Their squad car is what's called semi-marked, like this. It's black with no visible lights or sirens, and in the dark, you may not even know it's police. At 9:30, the officers were headed west on 8 Mile near Telegraph when they see a blue Saturn Aura headed in the opposite direction. From the video, it's unclear why the Saturn got the officers' attention, but the squad car does a U-turn and begins to follow. A report written the next day claimed the car was speeding, but that's not clear from the video, and a sergeant later determined that the officers did not have probable cause to stop the Saturn in the first place. But they followed it anyway, and instead of turning on their overhead lights and sirens, they turn on their spotlight. Police would later write that it was to illuminate the license plate, but look again. Before they turn the spotlight on, the plate is already clearly lit. Seconds later, the Saturn takes off, narrowly missing an oncoming vehicle, then almost hitting a tree. But still, the officers don't turn on their lights and sirens as policy dictates, even though they're now chasing the Saturn, reaching speeds of 65 miles per hour.
What are the reasons that officers don't turn on lights and sirens?
In a pursuit situation, there is no reasonable reason.
Dennis Kenny is a professor of law enforcement at John Jay College in New York who studied police chases across the country and reviewed this one.
There's very few outcomes that can happen when a pursuit occurs, and most of them are bad. The whole point of the lights and siren is to warn everyone so that they can protect themselves, get out of the way.
But no one on the road that night was given warning by police. One possible reason, the officers knew that turning on their lights and sirens would start recording the chase. What they didn't realize, according to investigators, it was already being recorded.
Well, it means that they knew that they were conducting an improper pursuit and were trying to conceal that fact.
The chase spilled out onto a busy 7-mile road as the Saturn approached Telegraph. Even still, Zamey and Bush kept the lights and sirens off, giving no warning to other drivers of a chase. So the SUV crossing Telegraph didn't have a chance to miss Linnell Dixon when he blew through a red light. The GMC Yukon was flipped. The husband and wife inside badly injured. They were sent to the hospital along with 2 others. And Miracle Jamerson,
did she have a pulse or anything? Oh,
was pronounced dead at the scene. Only after the crash did officers finally turn on their overhead lights.
Indicative of an absolute cover-up.
David Robinson was a Detroit cop for 13 years and today is an attorney who specializes in police misconduct cases.
They knew they were wrong. They knew they were in violation of the department policy.
The crash knocked out power to the area, and within minutes, EMS arrived on the scene along with other officers.
You guys see this? It happened right in front of us. I saw it happen? Yep.
DPD policy said Zamey and Bush should have already notified their superiors that the crash stemmed from their chase, but they didn't. In fact, hours would go by before investigators even learned there'd been a chase in the first place, and only after reviewing the dash cam video that Zamey and Bush didn't believe was recording. Officers were seen turning off their body cameras too, a violation of department policy, and they didn't disclose that in the back seat during the whole chase,
Oh my gosh.
was Officer Zamey's cousin.
It doesn't raise red flags, it waves them rather aggressively.
For Officer Zamey, it was only the latest controversy in a short 3-year career at DPD. He'd already been cited for failing to report a traffic crash involving 2 prisoners and 4 times for failing to turn on or keep on his body camera. 3 of the cases were dismissed. In a 4th, he was supposed to receive informal counseling and never did. Just 2 months prior to the chase, a Wayne County judge ruled Zamey conducted an illegal search of a man on private property. In the same case, another judge called Zamey's testimony ugly, not believable, and not credible at all.
To me, it's indicative of a supervision problem at that precinct. They are allowing it, they're empowering him to go out and commit further violations.
The officers an investigation concluded were attempting to conceal the totality of the circumstances behind the fatal crash, and that none could easily be considered credible. Had they simply followed policy and turned on their lights and sirens, a sergeant wrote, the outcome of this incident may have transpired differently.
We live right here. That's Demi's bar. This is Woodbine.
Miracle's family never knew of DPD's role in the pursuit and hadn't seen the dashcam video either until we talked with them. What haunts her sister most is seeing just how close Miracle was to making it home that night, only about a block away when police started to follow.
They rode past the house, Ma. My sister was coming home. My sister was coming home. He drove her past our house.
Wow. Okay. What was happening there that night? I'm trying to understand it. Ted Golden, I'll start with you. Your thoughts.
In an orthodox way of conducting an investigation, they violated all the policies that exist. When that car swerved, it's blue lights. Regardless of what they were doing prior to that, there's clearly something wrong with the driver. You call your supervisor, you put the call out on the air, you broadcast your position, your speed, where you're headed, you call for some backup, and you get ready for the tragedy that was coming, because clearly the driver was either intoxicated or on drugs. So it's unfortunate, but they dismissed all of them.
Dr. Jason Piccolo, any thoughts on why? I mean, it seems like there'd be no reason to do that unless there was a reason to not put your lights on, not pull them over, especially at the end once that swerving begins.
Yeah, it could have something to do with the passenger in the back. They don't want their supervisors to know about it. But this is a senseless loss of life. The whole investigation by outside parties and everything is turn on those lights, not just to stop the vehicle that you're pursuing, but also to alarm everybody in the area. So, and just like Ted said, if they notified everybody, they lit them up, maybe they could have stopped this vehicle ahead of time before it blew through an intersection and caused a loss of life and limb. This is just a horrible situation. And not doing proper procedures on numerous occasions, there's something there. And I still think it comes down to what the other personnel said is this needs a drastic supervisory oversight.
Yeah. And Ted, well, by not turning on the lights, but it seems like the driver must have known he was being followed by police, or do you think do we not even know if he thought he was being followed by police at that moment?
He knew he was being followed by somebody. The spotlight coming on might have alerted him that it was police officers, but he never knew. I mean, this guy, he probably got scared and just kept on rolling because he felt like somebody was trying to get him. It doesn't matter. There's no excuse, especially with this officer, with these many infractions. That shows you it's a severe lack of supervision. They're not tracking their people. These things only happen when we don't do what we're supposed to do, which is protect and serve.
Absolutely. And again, our thanks to Ross Jones and WXYZ. Great investigation there. All right, we've got more Crime Time straight ahead. Dr. Jason Piccolo, Ted Golden staying with us. We've got some deputies down in Flagler County taking down a suspect. We'll show you the video and break it all down next.
TriSarahVital.com.
Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us tonight, Dr. Jason Piccolo and Ted Golden. Next story comes to us from the sheriff down in Flagler County, Florida. Deputies take down a suspect after a traffic stop.
Roll over! Roll over! Got a hand under. Get your hand out.
Put your hand behind your back! Hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back!
Well, don't run. That's what you get. Sit up on your butt. Don't move. Sit right there.
You got a phone.
Huh? Oh, he's got the keys with him, too.
Check for, yeah.
He's Thank you.
And I know 107 units. Stand up.
Ready?
I'll take your back.
Ready? 1, 2. Grab that 1, 2, 3.
He's got arm warrants, right? Arm robbery warrants.
That's where it should be.
That's butt.
Well, let me get the other one out.
Hands in the pants. Just pull them out.
Yes, or are you requesting LEO or?
What's your name? All right, we're out. What's your name?
Lord, man.
What's your name?
You know my name.
Where's the keys? Thank you.
Something on me.
Yeah, they're wires.
Laser probes. Come on. Get these wires. Where do you want to park it at? I mean, just doing your guys. Yeah. I got members coming over here. Yeah. I'm going to get tire out.
All right, how does a fleeing suspect like this change the intensity of a pursuit, Dr. Jason Piccolo?
Oh, absolutely. It changes it dramatically. If you're pursuing them and they stay in a vehicle and you make the apprehension there, a felony stop, that's different than when they actually run. You don't know where you're running into. You see the officers pursuing a suspect from all different angles. When they approach him and they tase him and he's on his stomach and the hand is in his waistband area, that is one of the scariest situations to be in, because you don't know if he has a weapon. And they handled it correctly. I didn't see any punching. I didn't see any kicking. Obviously, their tensions were high, but I think they handled it correctly.
Ted Golden, at one point when he was on the ground and they're still trying to get control of him, I saw like a red laser dot on his back there, kind of floating around.
Well, you still got to cover the suspect regardless, making sure he does not pull a weapon. The more cops you got around, the better it is, because then he knows there's no way he can win. When there's 1 or 2 guys, he might try to get him, try to wrestle with him. But you know, I've been 5 guys on 1 guy who was high on some kind of drugs one time, and it took all 5 of us to get his hands behind his back and get him into custody. So, you know, the more the merrier, the safer it's going to be.
And does everybody have to write a report when they go back? Or is one person getting put in charge of that?
Just the arresting officer normally has to write a report. Usually you don't try to duplicate anything, because all that does is create confusion. Normally the person who arrested him is the one who writes a report. He may get some input from the other officers if there was something that they noticed or something they seized while they were taking part in the arrest situation. But
Gotcha.
Normally one person writes a report.
Right, because I know they always dreaded it on Barney Miller. And all right, anyway. Hey, Dr. Jason Piccolo, Ted Golden, thank you both so much. We'll see you again real soon. We'll be right back, folks. I still need your help.